Right now, though, I want to welcome to the program Senior Fellow at the Independent Women's Institute, Anna Rickers. Anna, thanks for coming on the program tonight.
Hi, Cam. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. It is a real pleasure, and thanks for writing about H.R. 822. You say that women around the country, particularly women who are right-to-carry holders, need the protections that are afforded by H.R. 822, the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act of 2011.
Absolutely. I mean, as a woman and as a concealed carry permit holder, my right to defend myself and my family shouldn't depend on what state issues my carry permit. And there are several states in this country, New York City, New Jersey, just to name a few, don't recognize any out-of-state permits. And we have a guaranteed right to keep and bear arms granted to us in the Constitution, and states should not be able to infringe on that right.
You know, I'm curious, have you been following what's been going on in New York City, where there have been a couple of arrests of people who have right-to-carry licenses in other states, including a 39-year-old a female medical student who saw a No Guns Allowed sign at the World Trade Center Memorial. She's a right-to-carry holder from Tennessee, thought that she had reciprocity in New York, saw the No Guns Allowed sign, went and said, oh, is there someplace I can store my firearm? Now she's facing 3.5 years in prison.
Absolutely, and that's a perfect example of the typical concealed carry permit holder is someone who obeys the law. She sees a sign that says no guns allowed. So she, being the good citizen, being the law-abiding citizen that she is, looks for a place to check her gun, and here she is facing a 3-year mandatory minimum sentence. That is absolutely ridiculous. Professor Glenn Reynolds talked about this, and he has an idea that instead of a penalty for violation being 3 years in prison, in cases where there is no intent, I mean, she didn't intend to bring a concealed carry. She had, she wasn't trying to break a law. She just didn't know.
Right.
At the very maximum should be some minimum fine. It should not be jail time at all.
Well, look, you're not going to get any argument from me. As a matter of fact, I think if it. Again, this demonstrates the need for national right to carry reciprocity. I mean, if you are, as Mayor Bloomberg has done, going to insist that people who try to do the right thing, are subject to 3.5 years in prison, I think we've got a much better case citing the Bill of Rights than Mayor Bloomberg has in citing New York law.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is, as a country, we're still coming to grips, and the courts and state legislatures and city mayors are still coming to grips on what enumerated and protected liberty actually is with regard to this right to keep and bear arms. Now, it's a constitutional reality that we do have a right to be armed, and that certainly this right extends beyond the four walls of your home. Now, the Constitution is silent whether this right to be armed is right to be armed with open carry or concealed carry. But the bottom line is that New York City, New York State, and all the other states that have these really strict gun laws are going to be forced to recognize some form of carry because it's mandated by the Second Amendment.
Well, and as you point out, you say that Congress, with H.R. 822, has a solid constitutional authority to deal with this issue.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of critics, even some critics from the gun-friendly commentators and politicians, want to cast this as a states' rights issue, and we don't even have to go down that road because Congress has the power in the Constitution to protect constitutional rights. They have the authority under the 14th Amendment, under the Full Faith and Credit Clause. They can actually require states, and that's what H.R. 822 sets out to do. If the state does issue permits, like New York State does issue permits, concealed carry permits, and New York City does as well, they just simply refuse to recognize anyone else's. What this law would do is to say, if you've already got a mechanism in place to grant this privilege to your citizens, you have to recognize other citizens that have that same privilege in their state. You can't discriminate against non-state residents, and that's they can demand that as part of their full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. Also, the protections of interstate travel, the privileges and immunities clause protects the right of individuals not to be treated differently just because they've crossed the state border. one state can't exclude non-residents from the protections and the privileges of their own state laws.
Well, listen, Anna, again, I'm really pleased that you're writing about this in the Washington Times. I believe women do need national concealed carry reciprocity. I believe men do as well. But as you point out, women who can defend themselves with a firearm, a lot of times a woman who's subject to a violent attack, they're not going to be going up against somebody who is their size, who is their weight, and who they could easily defend themselves with their fists.
Absolutely. This is an issue that's personal and important to me. Women, the guns are the great equalizer, I guess you could say. It gives power to the powerless. It's not just women, but handicapped, elderly. It allows the NRA in their publications have the stories to refuse to be a victim, and it gives you the power to refuse to be a victim. Instead of having to rely on someone else to protect you or the police to come after the fact, you have the power to protect yourself.
Well, Anna, as always, it's a real pleasure getting a chance to talk to you. Hope we can do it again soon, and thanks for shining a spotlight on this issue.
Well, thank you so much, and Happy New Year.
You too. Anna Rickers joining us, Senior Fellow at the Independent Women's Forum here on Cam & Company.